The Museo Universitario Arte Contemporáneo, widely known as MUAC, located on the campus of the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México in Mexico City, opened to the public in November of 2008 as part of UNAM's Centro Cultural Universitario. It was conceived as the first public museum in Mexico designed specifically to collect, research, and exhibit contemporary art. While other institutions in Mexico had presented modern and contemporary practices, MUAC was distinctive in dedicating itself institutionally and architecturally to art produced from the second half of the 20th century to the present. The museum houses and develops UNAM's collection of contemporary art, which focuses particularly on works created from 1952 onward, a date that corresponds to the consolidation of post-war artistic practices in Mexico. The building itself, designed by the Mexican architect Teodoro González de León, plays an important role in shaping the visitor's experience. González de León was known for his use of monumental concrete forms and his engagement with modernist architectural language. At MUAC, the architecture balances monumentality and flexibility. The galleries are expansive and adaptable, allowing for installations, large-scale sculpture, video, and experimental display formats. The museum's location within Ciudad Universitaria, recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, further situates it within a historically and culturally significant environment. As part of a major public university, MUAC is not only a museum, but also a research center and pedagogical space, fostering dialogue between artists, scholars, students, and the broader public. The last time I was here, I met Ai Weiwei at the opening of his exhibition Restablecer Memorias in 2019. This project brought together works by the Chinese artists that explore constructions of social memory, cultural destruction, and collective responsibility across different historical and geographic contexts. In this exhibition, Ai Weiwei discussed the construction of social memory through works that explore cultural destruction, trauma, and collective remembrance across very different contexts. The title, Restablecer Memorias, underscores the artist's interest in how societies remember and forget, and in the obligations that memory imposes on the present and future. One of the central works in the exhibition was Salon Ancestral de la Familia Wang from 2015, a 400-year-old wooden temple from the Ming dynasty. This structure serves as a powerful ready-made that encapsulates multiple layers of historical loss: the destruction of cultural heritage during periods of a political upheaval in China, the erosion of traditional rural life, and the commodification of cultural artifacts. By presenting this ancestral hall within the museum space, Ai Weiwei makes visible the consequences of historical violence and the fragile status of cultural memory itself. In conjunction with this historical piece, the exhibition incorporated more recent work that engaged directly with Mexican social realities. After visiting Mexico in 2016, Ai Weiwei initiated a project focused on the disappearance of the 43 students from the Escuela Normal Rural de Ayotzinapa in 2014. This component of the exhibition included a documentary film and a series of large portraits made with Lego pieces. These portraits functioned both as individual commemorations and also the use of Lego, which is an everyday material, emphasized the participatory dimensions of memory and the necessity of assembling narratives that we must now make sure resist erasure. There was also the exhibition Una modernidad hecha a mano, a modernity made by hand, which I visited in 2022, curated by Ana Elena Mallet, which offered a comprehensive exploration of the development of Mexican design from the early 1950s through 2022, with particular emphasis on the intersection of handcrafted methods and modernist design principles. The premise of the exhibition was to revisit the very notion of artisanal design in Mexico, design that arises from local conditions and artisanal practices, yet aspires to respond to the needs of modern life. The exhibition traced a genealogy of designers, artisans, fashion designers, and makers who sought to articulate a distinctive material culture rooted in both social purpose and aesthetic innovation. The project took as its point of departure the work of Clara Porset, the Cuban-Mexican designer who in 1952 organized an exhibition called El Arte en la Vida Diaria, the Art in Daily Life, the first major design exhibition in Mexico. Porset's vision was premised on the idea that design, craft, and industrial production should not remain separate spheres, but could be integrated to produce functional objects that were accessible and meaningful in everyday life. It was a fantastic exhibition, and it had a beautiful diversity. It had weavings, it had jewelry, it had various housewares. It had this incredible little monkey lamp, which I really wanted to take home with me. Just gorgeous. Mexico is definitely an incredible source of modern design. They really do beautiful industrial design and craft-based design so well. Then there is the exhibition that I went to see this trip. And the main one was a retrospective of the work of Marta Palau. So the title, Mis Caminos Son Terrestres, roughly translated by me as My Paths Belong to the Earth. Palau was a Spanish-born artist who developed much of her career in Mexico and is known for her engagement with themes of migration, exile, territory, and the body. Her work frequently incorporates organic materials such as fibers, earth, and wood, creating sculptural and installation-based environments that evoke ritual, landscape, and memory. The exhibition foregrounds the relationship between corporeality and geography, suggesting that identity is not abstract, but grounded in lived, embodied experience. In revisiting Palau's work, the museum contributes to the reassessment of artists whose practices intersect feminist, decolonial, and ecological perspectives. Palau frequently employed natural fibers such as jute, sisal, henequen, and other plant-based materials, often working at a monumental scale. Through binding, knotting, twisting, and weaving, she constructed large sculptural forms that hover between textile architecture and ritual objects. These works resist easy categorization. They are neither traditional tapestries nor conventional sculptures. Instead, they occupy an interstitial space that challenges hierarchies between so-called fine art and craft. In doing so, Palau reclaims textile labor, historically associated with domesticity, femininity, and indigenous traditions, as a site of aesthetic and intellectual rigor. And I was sure that that was cochineal dye in that sculpture. It didn't have it in the didactics of the exhibition, but it definitely looked like that to me. So weaving in Palau's work functions both materially and metaphorically. Materially, the interlacing of fibers produces dense tactile surfaces that evoke skin, hair, shelter, and earth. The viewer encounters these works not as flat images, but almost as corporeal presences. Many of her fiber installations suggest organic forms such as cocoons, nests, or protective enclosures, reinforcing the idea of refuge and origin. The object of weaving itself becomes an embodied gesture, one that records the repetitive, accumulated labor of the artist's hand. On a metaphorical level, weaving becomes a powerful model for thinking about territory, when you think about the threads that cross and bind, forming structures that depend on interconnection rather than singularity. And in this sculpture, I was pretty sure that was indigo, judging from the colors and the variations in the dyeing. Given her biography, born in Spain, exiled during the Civil War, and later based in Mexico, questions of displacement and belonging are central to her practice. The woven structure can be understood as an image of diasporic identity, strands from different origins intertwined to create new forms. She also did wonderful, almost anthropomorphic forms as well. Then there was the feet. So these were fantastic. These were these almost bat-like vampiric forms that were done as sculptures. And this was a mummy-like creature that also had a really great foot. That is one of my favorite sculptures from the show, a really fantastic hand sculpture that was almost as big as me. Okay, then there was the work of Delcy Morelos. Her exhibition of contemporary work, El Espacio Vientre, was a site-specific installation that transformed the entire gallery into an immersive environment. Morelos, a Colombian artist, frequently works with natural materials such as soil and clay, creating enveloping spaces that evoke notions of origin, womb, and earth. The title, which translates roughly as the womb space, signals an interest in interiority and genesis. Visitors do not merely observe the work, but enter into it physically and sensorially. Such installations complicate the traditional separation between artwork and spectator. There was use of spice, even to create a sensory engagement with the environment. According to the exhibition didactics, the project presented inaugurates a new series of commissioned works for the museum's Gallery 9. Based on visits the artist made to Mexico City, Oaxaca, and Chiapas, she conceived an installation that occupies the entirety of Gallery 9. Morelos has been exploring various relationships with the earth, food, magic, and mythologies that have shaped her understanding of social relationships and our connection to nature. For her, the earth is a feminine entity, especially in relation to fertility and sustenance. What human beings have historically done is develop technologies that allow them to establish relationships with this entity. These food-related techniques depend not only on forms of production and consumption, but are also based on possible relationships between the divine, the magical, and the natural, and the social. Morelos understands the earth as a divinity that encompasses the cycles of life and death, but also as one that has always been at the center of cycles of exploitation, war, and violence. This is why the work seeks to redefine our relationship with the earth, to reclaim its relevance and inspire awe at its vitality, end quote. Really interesting piece. I was alone in it. I was in it with students, so it had a very different dynamic. It was quite wonderful engaging with the installation. Then there was a group exhibition called Los Grupos y Otras Revueltas Artísticas. And this large-scale group exhibition occupies multiple galleries and examines the role of artist collectives and collaborative practices in reshaping the field of contemporary art. So the title suggests a dual emphasis, one on groups as formalized collectives, and one on other artistic revolts, meaning broader movements of rupture and dissent within artistic production. In the Mexican context, artist groups have played a significant role in challenging institutional structures, particularly from the 1960s onward, when collectives emerged in response to political repression, student movements, and dissatisfaction with dominant aesthetic paradigms. By revisiting these histories, the exhibition invites viewers to consider how collective action has functioned as both an artistic strategy and a political stance. It also encourages reflection on how collaboration can disrupt traditional notions of authorship and artistic genius. So a lot of these works were radical, site-specific, time-specific, and worked on through collective practices. I like the installation in the middle of the room that had these cubby holes with all these various objects and garments as part of the artistic expression. Then there was Nestor Jimenez, A smaller exhibition focused on the work of Nestor Jimenez, whose work explores perception, materiality, and spatial intervention. Jimenez's work often transforms everyday materials or architectural elements into perceptual experiences that unsettle viewers' expectations. By manipulating scale, repetition, or subtle shifts in form, he prompts a reconsideration of how space is constructed and experienced. He also uses subtle collage techniques with his little bows and his hinges. In the context of MUAC's architecture, such work acquires particular resonance as it interacts with the building's clean lines and expansive volumes. The exhibition underscores MUAC's role in supporting sustained, research-based presentations of individual artists, allowing for a deeper understanding of their conceptual and formal concerns. Taken together, all of these exhibitions reflect several recurring concerns within contemporary art: the politics of collective action, the reconfiguration of space, the entanglement of body and territory, and the critical interrogation of narrative. Also, the sophisticated use of craft techniques. They also demonstrate MUAC's dual commitment to historical reflection and present-day experimentation. All of the exhibitions I have seen at MUAC have been thought-provoking, visually compelling, and often quite gorgeous. The museum occupies an important position within Mexico's cultural landscape. As part of UNAM, it bridges academic research and public engagement. As an architectural landmark, it provides a space uniquely suited to contemporary artistic practices. And as a curatorial platform, it fosters critical dialogue around art's capacity to respond to social, political, and ecological realities. There is a highly sophisticated understanding and expression of visual culture in Mexico, and this has been beautifully articulated by the curatorial offerings at MUAC. My name is Dr. Mark Joseph O'Connell. Thank you for your time. I am currently in Mexico doing research for my upcoming monograph on Industrial Revolution era production in Mexico, Canada, and the United States.